I'm not teaching, I'm publicly learning. But hi and welcome to Learning for the Life in the UK test part 16, the Norman Conquest part 4. Participating in the exercises is at your own risk, and what we're doing as exercises is this training. So, the Scots and the Normans fought on the border between England and Scotland. The Normans took over some land on the border but did not invade Scotland. So Scotland was not conquered by the Normans, who had conquered England under William the Conqueror and the Battle of Hastings 1066, and it was on William the Conqueror. And they also did not conquer Wales. They conquered it for a short time, but then were gradually pushed out by the Welsh. Something else was interesting here. King Alfred the Great united the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms in England, and under Kenneth MacAlpin, the people in Scotland united because of the threat through Viking invasion, which had started to happen from 789 onward. So in the south, King Alfred the Great, and in the north, so in Scotland, Kenneth MacAlpin. William sent people all over England to draw up lists of all the towns and villages. So William the Conqueror, who was the Duke of Normandy in France and had then come over to conquer Britain in 1066, he conquered Great Britain. He conquered England, not Scotland, Wales only for a short time. William sent people all over England to draw up lists of all the towns and villages. Maybe we're going to know in the sentence what he wanted, but he sent people out to ask what towns and villages are all there in England. The people who lived there, who owned the land, and what animals they owned, were also listed, so he did more than just one thing. He wanted to know the names of the towns and villages, and the people who lived there. Yes, the people who lived there were also listed, so he wanted to know the names of the people who lived there. And who owned the land, so he wanted to know who and what parts had which area of land in their possession, and what animals they owned were also listed. So if someone had a cow or something, I guess. The first exercise, we are starting again with a spotlight. We're having the fists next to us, and we're bringing them down and up. That exercise is the spotlight. And we're doing all these exercises according to 3 rules. The first rule is that we're stopping immediately if there's pain. The second rule is that we're going only as far as we can cope with a little bit of effort when we're turning around and going into the other direction. And the third one is that we're doing never as much as we can even do. You certainly not to do too much, so that was enough. Now the next exercise, the flashlight. By the flashlight, the hands are going to the left and right. So we're doing less when we are capable of doing. We don't want to overwork the muscles. We don't even want to do what we are capable of doing. So that was the flashlight, and the next one will be the magician. Now, first, back to William the Conqueror, who sent out people to list all the towns and villages, and I made with the names of the people who lived there, and the elders, and who owned what land. This was called the Domesday Book. We're going to stay with Domesday Book. So they may do just one book. Was it enough for multiple people sent out to list all the villages, people, and the people living there, and who owned what land and what animals they had? Just one book. Maybe they had a very small handwriting, or it was a very thick book. So it is the Domesday Book. Doomsday is not the best name. Domesday Book. It still exists today and gives a picture of society in England just after the Norman Conquest. There are some things existing still. One thing existing is, for example, Stonehenge in Wiltshire, used for seasonal ceremonies. Another thing still existing is the best preserved. I'm switching the letters. I'm making always pre-reserved. That's the error I make. Preserved. It's just preserved. It's not pre-reserved. It's just preserved. So the best preserved prehistoric village in northern Europe, ZUKPPG on Orkney Island. Another island is Iona, where the monastery is which Saint Columba had founded. Another missionary came from Ireland, missionarying in northern England was St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. And another thing still existing is, for example, this helmet. And a helmet out of the time of the Vikings and Anglo-Saxons. I don't know how much is left of one king of the Anglo-Saxons who was buried in Sutton Hoo, which is in modern Suffolk. But he was buried with armor and treasure in a ship, and then there was earth, soil made on top. And another thing left was the Bayeux tapestry, a 17-meter long embroidered wall carpet tapestry, on which the Battle of Hastings from 1066, where William the Conqueror, previously William the Duke of Normandy, had defeated Harold the Saxon king and conquered England. Wales only partially, then the Welsh had put them out again. There was fighting between the Scots, between England and Scotland, between the Scots and the Normans. They took some land, but they did not conquer the whole thing. And another thing still left is the Domesday Book, in which was written down what the people who William the Conqueror had sent out through England to list all the villages and towns and the people living there and who owned what land and what animals is written down. That book is still existing. The next exercise is the magician. We're having flat hands. No, it is not the magician. We're doing the T-Rex in the morning. The hands out, and we're bringing the hands down. And again up, and down, and up, and let's say 2 times more. So having the half of 2 additional more rounds. No, I forgot to count. So that were 2, maybe even 3. Next exercise, it is the T-Rex in the gym. If you don't have a tennis ball, just do it without one. Just press onto the tennis ball or just make a strong fist. And release again. And the second round. And third round. Third and final round. I'm switching and both hands have a turn. So now press onto the tennis ball. And we're releasing again. And second time. And the third. There were also other things left. For example, Maiden Castle can be still visited, a fort in which the people living together, and the forts. Okay, I can't find it. It was by the Romans, but it was here. Houses Stead and Vindolanda, 2 forts along the Hadrian Wall, which is part of the UNESCO World Heritage. And they are also left. And there was something else with that. So the Domesday Book. And it still exists today and gives a picture of society in England just after the Norman Conquest. So because of this book, which is written in there, we can have a little picture of how the life looked during the time of the Norman Conquest, or just after the Norman Conquest in England, because William the Conqueror had sent out people to list what towns there are, what villages, what people lived there, what animals they had, and who owned what land. This ZUKPPG, this best preserved prehistoric village on Orkney Island, helps archaeologists to understand how people lived during the Ice Age, near the end of the Stone Age. Did I say Ice Age? Here was never anything said about an Ice Age. So there was the Stone Age 10,000 years ago. But it was not false what I said about the Ice Age. It had something to do with that. Maybe these are parallel terms or other things. The one means, I don't want to say more wrong things. But here's the Stone Age was 10,000 years ago, but it was previously that the Ice Age was there. But first the Scandinavian ice shield had melted, and then there was still more melting of ice. So even if the Ice Age, the total Ice Age, had ended before the Stone Age began, it still was processing the end of the Ice Age. It still processes until today. that the sea levels were rising. So all that is not affected by that, just that it was Stone Age, not the Ice Age 10,000 years ago. Stone Age 10,000, 6,000 the farmers, 4,000 bronze, after that the Iron Age. Okay, now we have a little bit what we have to know. Check that you understand the history of the UK before the Romans. Let's do the next exercise. It is the cautious Big Bang. The fingertips of one hand on top of the fingernails of the other hand, and we're opening up and we are closing again. We are opening and we are closing. And we're opening and closing. So these, I think, are 4 questions, are not part of the Roman Conquest chapter. So I wouldn't have a problem to say we have added the 4 chapters about the Norman Conquest. But we want to go at least a little bit over them. We're closing again. And now to the next exercise. It is a frog testing the water temperature. Flattens next to it. You bring the hands down with flat fingers. And up again with strong fists. Down with flat fingers. And up again with strong fists. And again down with flat fingers. And the last time up with strong fists. Now to the quadrangular castle architect. The hands out with fists and returning these fists towards each other. Now up. And to the outside. In, up, down, up. And now we're halfway backwards, down, and to the side, up, and into the middle. And last exercise, a frog anxious to a fever. Arm next to us, hand formed to a fist. We're bringing the fist down and we're pressing a little bit against the index finger. And now from the outside, all the here carefully. And from the top. And now from the bottom. And switching over to the other hand because the crab is really anxious and has to measure to both hands multiple times for fever. Now from the outside. And from the top. And now we're done with various exercises. A little relaxation for the extension digital muscle, this muscle here. So we're making a straight arm, a little bend in the elbow, and we're going with moderate pressure over the middle part of the lower arm. We will not have time to go through all these 4 questions, not even if we're going only for an answering on the surface of the subjects we are about. Let's look what these 4 questions are. The history of UK before the Romans. Now what we mean is how the people lived in early Britain. Yes, before the Romans, so during the Stone Age and the farmers, and then the Bronze Age, that were living in round houses and had round burrows. As we built, for example, Stonehenge in Wiltshire, and they were making seasonal ceremonies, they were also ceremonies. And they had a sophisticated culture and economy. They were farmers and craft workers and warriors. They were living partly in hill forts. For example, Maiden Castle. The next question is the impact of the Romans on British society. That is actually just a little bit here. That is a little bit just here. That is just, they built roads and public buildings, created a structure of law and introduced new plants and animals. That is all here. Yeah, okay, you could say that they built the Hadrian's Wall. That is an impact on the British society. It is that sentence. They built roads and public buildings, created a structure of law and introduced new plants and animals. Yeah, okay, there's a statue for Boudica on Westminster Bridge. The different groups that invaded after the Romans, for example, the Vikings in 789, or the Utes and the Angles and the Saxons, and the Normans, or the Norman Conquest and William the Conqueror, and the importance of the Norman invasion in 1060. It's important because the ruling class started to talk Norman French, and that had an influence on modern day English. Yeah, what do we want? It That is a pretty broad question. The importance of a Roman invasion in 1066. It had an immense influence, and we could write for hundreds of pages about it. But all written here is just with one sentence. All the other things just about how the conquest happened. Now I guess by then that the ruling started to talk Norman French, and that it had an influence on the modern English. Because that there is a tapestry somewhere which is 70 meters long, it's not really an influence. I thank you very much, and thank you very much until the next time.